Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Investing in Cybersecurity, Making the Case, sponsored by Booz Allen Hamilton on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests are Stan Lowe, an executive advisor at Booz Allen Hamilton, and Brad Stone, a vice president at Booz Allen Hamilton. I want to return to the panel discussion I referenced earlier that we had with your colleague, Brad Mederi. One of the key takeaways from the around progress is I think we're going to spend the next a few minutes talking about what progress can be made, what are some of the solutions. And one of the key areas that came up during the panel was this idea of artificial intelligence, machine learning, bringing those new technologies, up and coming technologies into the cyber fight. One of the things one of the areas that it does is reduces the attack surface. That was the kind of what the panel was talking about. The other thing they talk about is the idea of deep forensics and automated information sharing, very similar to, I think, what Stan was talking about earlier about the conductor and automation and all those things to help make it easier on the CISO. So these are ways that the organizations can use these new technologies to reduce the cyber threat. So let's start there. Let me turn to Brad for this round to start us off with. What is being done? What can be done? Where do you see the fight getting worse, better? Give us a sense of where this is all heading.
Yeah, so the fight's getting better because I think the tools and the techniques are keeping up back to this idea of machine speed. That doesn't mean that it's easier. I actually think the job of the individual person in the ops center is becoming more complex, but the tools that they have at their disposal are greater. And it gets focused around the idea of our security analytics and automation capabilities that respond to those things. I think this is a little bit of a misnomer when we start thinking about analytics and getting all the way to the point of machine learning. A lot of your commercial CISOs are interested in thinking of that, but it's at this point just getting the simple benefit of moving towards automation to scale back the resources that are necessary to it. A lot of the conversations we've had with many CISOs, it's almost like thinking 15, 25 years ago with a data center of, to run a data center, you had an army of folks walking the floors and switching things off. That's our current op centers. We keep throwing more bodies at the problem. Well, with these kind of solutions of analytics and automation tools, we're able to actually reduce the number of staff and focus them on really differentiated roles. So that's kind of the first step we're seeing folks move towards as a baby step, ultimately to a vision towards this machine learning that'll actually get us at machine level speeds.
Stan, I've never actually heard that analogy that Brad made of initial early data centers. There's people clicking buttons, changing stuff, and it's a great analogy because are you seeing cyber heading in that direction in the government now?
Yeah. So you're one of the problems that we're having. A lot of the times, most CISOs and most of the cybersecurity professionals out there have a tendency to approach the problem by, I will buy technology to solve this particular problem, which is actually sort of backwards from actually the way you would normally think about this. We're getting to the point now to where we've got enough technology out there. The deal is now we have to do things like we have to have good processes, and we have to have the people and buy the technology that supports the processes and the people. So we're getting to the point now to where we're running out of people because everything is everybody's having the same problem with hiring cybersecurity in the government, outside the government. It's open warfare on poaching. I mean, it's not a day goes by where somebody's not calling up, knocking on one of our people's door, or we're doing conversely the same thing to other people, trying to recruit people. So we've gotten to the point to where we're using a finite set of resources. So now we've got to apply those resources smaller. And I think the way that we're going to be able to do that is concentrate on our processes, build the people into the processes. They may not be in the jobs that they are today. Retrain them and repurpose them into meeting those processes that are risk-based and operationally focused for the agency, and buy the technology that supports those two things, and then add into that orchestration and automation that allows us to be able to more effectively utilize those resources.
Stan, I think the workforce point, we could spend the whole program on the workforce issue, but let me just go down that path just a little bit. Brad, when you guys at Booz Allen or some of the clients you work with and they talk about the workforce, I heard a very interesting description from the Social Security Administration CIO a number of months ago when I interviewed him, talk about a coding boot camp where he needs to bring people into code. Now, this is necessarily cyber, but this is just developers. Are you seeing cybersecurity boot camps? Are you seeing, whether it's Booz Allen or other commercial clients, grabbing people who kind of have a basic understanding and really training them up very quickly?
Yeah, definitely the workforce challenge and these kind of boot camps are critical for us to maintain the advantage no matter what client it is. It's interesting to hear kind of that development and coding perspective. The smart operator, the cybersecurity analyst of today and the future actually is part developer, part engineer, just part, inquisitive mind but has to have a set of skill sets. And so we are constantly training folks on the latest scripting, the latest third-party orchestration tool, the latest SIM analytics engine. Those are kind of quick response things that the skill sets, this is the kind of currency of the staff that's out there today. And any organization needs to be constantly refreshing those folks. But there does have to actually have some hardcore skills. That's where still it's a room for the computer scientists and the engineers to come in there and quickly come up to speed on those new tools.
For years, Stan, we've heard the soft skills. It's fine to have some hard skills, but you also need the idea of understanding mission, understand business, and then applying it. Is that the other workforce piece? As Brad was talking about, you got to have those really highly technical skills, but you also, if you don't know the mission, it doesn't matter how much you know.
So the interesting thing about a lot of cybersecurity and a lot of tech guys in general is they're very binary. They're very engineering. It either is or it isn't. And it's, with compliance, it either is compliant or it's not compliant. They're basing their decisions and their reactions off of regulations and guidelines, which is all good and fine. However, what we need to start doing is taking those people and changing their mindset. Listen, you're here to do a job that allows the agency to deliver its mission in the most secure, effective means possible based upon the risk. We could choose to accept the risk. If we do, that's okay. What we do is figure out some way to mitigate that risk in some fashion. But the really cool thing is running off of what Brad was talking about, some of the things that we're starting to see are, organizations, especially within Booz Allen that are actually developing those types of boot camps. We have a thing called, which is awesomely cool. It's one of my favorite things, called Kaizen, that we use to actually train offensive, look for talent and train talent, and another one called CyberSim that we use to assess that nascent talent within the workforce. It says possibly have the curiosity for one, the ability to learn the types of activities that they need to learn, and have that sort of suss out that, hey, this person may be good for this area. Let's take him and put him into some different type of training and maybe refocus his career in that way, and sort of homegrown that. And we're starting to do that we're starting to see that a lot in the federal government. They say, hey, come in and help us identify internal resources that we have, as well as a lot of our commercial sectors, because they realize that, getting these people is getting more and more difficult.
Brad, where are we going? Look, if you think about 3 years, 5 years, 7 years from now, I know it's hard to talk specifics about, well, we're going to have this type of technology, but the automation piece, the orchestration piece seems to be a theme I hear time and again when I talk cyber. What's next? What are some of those, up and coming solutions? We talked artificial intelligence, we talked machine learning. What else is out there?
Yeah, so I think we're going to be continuing to apply technology as we right now are seeing the combination of the Security Operations Center and the Network Operations Center. So that's where you're hearing many things around how do I harness the power of software-defined networking from not only an operational provisioning perspective, but ultimately applying that in a cybersecurity perspective. All of these technologies and techniques are about virtualizing the process and automating it and allowing an individual person to have greater power. Over time, though, that still doesn't keep up with that machine level speed. It's all about how quickly you can detect and how quickly you can remediate. And so to really go to machine level speed, it is creating those thresholds in logic that it can do that at machine level speed. But back to what Stan's talked about earlier, it's not just pure technology for technology's sake. That intelligence, those thresholds are going to have to be built off the operational imperatives. That's where it ties back to the leadership component that we talked about earlier. If you don't understand what you're securing, if you don't understand your crown jewels, if you don't understand those pieces, then the tools are just going to respond to the adversaries. It's all about the smart provision of that. And I think that's where the challenge, where we don't get too wonky and just say, oh, technology is going to solve these. Because often we have commercial CISOs that are saying, I'm a little bit skeptical of this Skynet kind of thing you're talking about here that's going to take over my network. It's not quite that. It is smart orchestration, smart automation within still human control.
You gotta love the Skynet references. The Terminator is gonna be all of us one day. Stan, you get the last word of the program today. Talk a little bit about where you see this is going, both from a federal perspective, but also a general perspective.
I think, you know, Brad's pretty much hit the nail on the head with regards to, you know, how things, it's not whether if it will evolve, it is how it has to evolve. And the reason behind that is we're getting inundated with more and more and more data, attacks, information. So we have to think of a different way of doing what we've been doing in the past, because we're not going to be able to keep up. So changing that focus to, you know, process people supported by technology, being risk-based, using artificial intelligence, using orchestration and automation, and using the tools that you have more effectively and implementing them properly, and making sure that, you know, that they're actually providing what you intended for them to provide. They're just not being sold to, you know, bought to solve a particular problem, that they have multiple uses, that you have a defense in depth, that your enterprise is resilient, that it is modular, and that it is, you know, it has the ability to be able to grow with the enterprise and scale with the enterprise based upon the number of, you know, the data sets that you're getting in, I think is going to be key and critical for not only the private sector, but the federal sector going through, because, you know, we're, you know, one of the largest enterprises on the face of the earth, and we're continuing to grow.
All right, I think both good advice, good ways to look forward. Unfortunately, though, that's all the time we have for today. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Investing in Cybersecurity, Making the Case, sponsored by Booz Allen Hamilton on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. I'd like to thank my guests today, Brad Stone, Vice President at Booz Allen Hamilton, Stan Lowe, Executive Advisor at Booz Allen Hamilton. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thanks.
For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsradio.com and search Cybersecurity Awareness Month.